Let me be real with you right now. We live in a world that loves to pretend, that loves to stay comfortable, that loves to turn its back when things get ugly. But comfort is killing us. Silence is killing us. Right now, across the globe, millions of women are being harassed, abused, silenced, and the world wants to sweep it under the rug like it doesn't exist. That's weakness. That's cowardice. You want to know the truth. The truth is, this is not just their fight, it's our fight. Every single one of us has a role to play. Harassment isn't just a women's issue, it's a human crisis. And until we get uncomfortable, until we confront the brutal facts, until we stop hiding behind excuses, nothing will change. So I'm asking you today, stop being soft, stop being silent, stop looking away. Face the reality. Get uncomfortable. And let's build a world where women don't have to fight this battle alone. Stay hard. Facing the brutal truth of global harassment means cutting through the layers of denial that society has built up over centuries, tearing down the illusions that allow people to stay comfortable while others are being crushed under the weight of abuse, discrimination, and silence. Every single day, women across the globe face harassment in workplaces, in schools, in the streets, and even within their own homes, and yet the dominant culture pretends that it's not happening, or worse, minimizes it to something tolerable, something to be endured. That is the soft lie the world feeds itself, and it's the lie that allows abuse to continue. The brutal truth is this harassment is not isolated, it is not rare, and it is not some unfortunate accident of life. It is systemic, deeply ingrained, and perpetuated by the silence of those who refuse to confront it. When you look at the statistics, the sheer scale is overwhelming, but numbers don't tell the full story. Behind every statistic is a human being, a woman who feels dehumanized, diminished, stripped of dignity, forced to live with the weight of trauma that never should have existed in the first place. To face this truth means to stop sugarcoating reality. It means accepting that society has failed, that laws are not enough, that policies on paper don't always translate to protection on the ground. Facing the brutal truth means staring into the raw pain that millions endure and not turning your eyes away because it makes you uncomfortable. Comfort is the enemy here, because comfort allows ignorance, and ignorance feeds injustice. There's a reason why denial is so seductive. It is far easier to believe that the problem isn't that bad, that progress is happening slowly, that at least things are better than before. But that mindset is a trap. That mindset is weakness disguised as optimism. That mindset is what allows predators to continue unchecked, what allows workplaces to ignore complaints, what allows entire cultures to shame victims instead of confronting perpetrators. Facing the brutal truth demands that you strip away those illusions and acknowledge the ugly reality that harassment is a global crisis. It is happening everywhere. Wealthy nations, poor nations, modern cities, rural villages. No place is immune because the problem is not geography, it is humanity, it is power, it is control. And if you refuse to see that, you are part of the problem. It takes courage to face the brutal truth, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Once you acknowledge it, you can't hide behind excuses. And that's exactly why so many people choose blindness, because awareness creates responsibility. If you know the truth, then you have to act, you have to speak, you have to push back against a system that thrives on silence. Facing this reality means holding up a mirror to humanity and seeing not the polished version, not the filtered picture, but the raw, unedited, harsh reality. That reflection isn't pretty, but it's necessary, because transformation doesn't happen through denial. It happens through confrontation. Harassment doesn't just damage the victims, it corrodes the fabric of society. It teaches young boys that dominance is acceptable. It teaches young girls that silence is survival, and it creates a cycle where abuse becomes normalized. Facing the brutal truth means recognizing that this isn't just about isolated acts, it's about cultures that permit them, systems that protect the perpetrators, and environments that punish the victims for speaking out. The truth is harsh, but without confronting it, nothing will change. Without calling it by its name, without stripping away the polite disguises and the soft language, we are simply lying to ourselves. Harassment is not a misunderstanding, it is not miscommunication, it is not harmless behavior. It is violence, it is control. It is power wielded to break another human being. The brutal truth also demands that we stop putting the burden on women to protect themselves, to adapt, to tolerate. That mindset itself is part of the problem. Facing reality means shifting the focus from victims to the perpetrators, from how can women stay safe to why are men allowed to harass without consequence. Facing the brutal truth means asking uncomfortable questions, exposing uncomfortable answers, and refusing to settle for half measures. It means calling out hypocrisy when leaders speak about equality but remain silent when harassment scandals erupt under their watch. It means demanding accountability not only from individuals but from institutions, from governments, from corporations, from schools, from every structure that holds power. When you commit to facing the brutal truth, you step out of the comfort zone of denial and into the battlefield of reality. It is not easy, it is not pleasant, and it sure as hell is not comfortable. But comfort has never built anything worth building. Growth, change, and justice are born in discomfort. To see the truth of global harassment is to confront the pain, the injustice, the failure of humanity, and to carry that weight instead of pushing it aside. Only then can the fight for change be real, because only then are we fighting the actual enemy, not the softened version we pretend exists. Silence and comfort fuel abuse because they create the perfect environment for predators to operate without fear of exposure, without fear of consequence, without fear of resistance. Every time a victim stays quiet out of fear of retaliation or shame, every time a witness looks the other way to avoid involvement, every time an institution chooses to protect its reputation instead of protecting its people, that silence becomes the oxygen feeding the fire of harassment. Comfort works the same way. People cling to comfort because it keeps them safe from conflict, safe from discomfort, safe from accountability. But comfort is the breeding ground of injustice. It is in silence and comfort that abuse not only survives but thrives. Think about how the cycle works. A woman is harassed at her workplace. She considers speaking up, but she remembers the stories of others who spoke up and lost their jobs, were blacklisted, were labeled as troublemakers. So she chooses silence. That silence emboldens the perpetrator, who now knows he can continue without consequence. That silence is observed by others who conclude that speaking up is dangerous, that survival requires submission. And so the cycle continues. The abuser grows stronger, the victims grow quieter, and the institution remains comfortable in its denial. Silence is not neutral. It is permission. Silence tells the oppressor, keep going, nothing will stop you. Comfort tells society, stay still, don't move, don't disrupt the system. Even if the system is broken, courage and action, on the other hand, are the forces that disrupt this cycle. They are the antidotes to silence and comfort. Courage doesn't mean you aren't afraid. It means you act in spite of fear. Action doesn't always mean dramatic gestures. It means refusing to sit still when wrong is being done, refusing to swallow words that need to be spoken, refusing to normalize behaviors that destroy lives. Courage is uncomfortable, action is costly, but without them, harassment will never end. Every social movement that has ever brought real change was born from the courage of individuals who refused silence and the action of groups who rejected comfort. Without those, injustice reigns unchecked. Look at history. Nothing significant was ever changed by people who chose silence and comfort. Civil rights, women's rights, labor rights, every inch of progress was carved out by people who were willing to lose their comfort, who were willing to speak when silence was demanded, who were willing to act when the world told them to sit down. The fight against harassment demands the same kind of courage. It demands that we stop waiting for someone else to step forward, stop waiting for institutions to magically transform, stop waiting for the culture to evolve on its own. Waiting is just another form of silence, another form of comfort. Real change starts with the individual who decides to say no more. There's a cost to courage and action, and that's why they are so rare. People fear the backlash, the consequences, the isolation that comes from breaking silence. Institutions fear lawsuits, scandals, financial loss, reputational damage. But the truth is, the cost of silence is always greater. The cost of comfort is always higher. Harassment doesn't disappear when ignored. It festers, it spreads, it becomes culture. The longer silence reigns, the more entrenched the problem becomes, until it feels like a natural part of life instead of the crime that it is. Courage and action cut into that cycle. They rip the mask off the abuser. They shine a light into the shadows. They make it impossible for predators to hide behind denial. Courage is contagious. When one person breaks silence, others find strength to follow. When one person takes action, it sparks a chain reaction. That's how cultures change, not through passive waiting, not through polite tolerance, but through bold disruptions. Action doesn't have to be massive to be powerful. Speaking up in a meeting when someone makes an inappropriate comment, standing beside a colleague who has been harassed, holding leadership accountable instead of letting him sweep issues under the rug. These small acts build momentum. They tell the world that harassment is not normal, that silence is not an option, that comfort is not more important than justice. Over time, those small acts create waves that dismantle even the strongest walls of abuse. The enemy knows this, and that's why silence and comfort are encouraged at every turn. Victims are pressured to stay silent, whistleblowers are punished, those who demand change are called disruptive. That is how the system protects itself. But once courage and action take root, once people refuse to be silenced, the system starts to crack. Predators lose their shield, institutions lose their excuses, cultures lose their toxic traditions. Courage is the hammer that breaks denial, action is the force that rebuilds something stronger in its place. Silence and comfort may feel safe, but they are dangerous. They create the illusion of stability while allowing rot to spread underneath. Courage and action may feel risky, but they are the only real path to safety, the only path to justice. Every time someone chooses silence, an abuser gains power. Every time someone chooses comfort, a victim loses hope. Every time someone chooses courage, a barrier is broken. Every time someone chooses action, a culture is shifted. This is not just a women's issue. It's a human responsibility. That's the hard truth most people don't want to face. Too often society labels harassment as a woman's problem, as if it exists in some separate category that men can step away from, observe from a distance, and decide whether or not they want to get involved. That kind of thinking is weak, it's lazy, and it's part of the reason harassment keeps thriving. Harassment doesn't just affect women, it affects families, communities, workplaces, and entire cultures. When half of humanity is being harassed, silenced, or diminished, the whole of humanity pays the price. To stand aside and call it someone else's issue is to deny your own responsibility as a human being living in this world. Responsibility is heavy, and that's why so many people run from it. It's easier to shrug and say, that's not my problem, than it is to step up and take action. It's easier to say, that happens to women, not to me, than it is to recognize that every time harassment goes unchecked, society gets weaker, more divided, more toxic. But responsibility doesn't care about your comfort. It doesn't care about your excuses. Responsibility means ownership. It means if you see something wrong and you stay silent, you're complicit. It means if you benefit from a system that allows harassment to thrive, then you are part of the system. That's the brutal truth, and most people can't handle it. So they keep passing the weight on to women, expecting them to fix the problem alone, when in reality it requires everyone. When you look at harassment through the narrow lens of it being only a women's issue, you strip away the urgency for collective action. It becomes something that can be pushed into women's organizations, women's rights groups, women's marches, as if the rest of the world can sit back and watch. That separation is what weakens the fight. Because harassment doesn't exist in isolation. It affects children who watch their mothers endure abuse. It affects men who watch their sisters suffer in silence. It affects workplaces that lose talent and productivity because women are forced out. It affects entire economies when half the population cannot thrive. To dismiss harassment as a women's issue is to close your eyes to the chain reaction of damage it creates everywhere. Human responsibility means men have to step up, not just as bystanders, but as active participants in ending the cycle. It means institutions have to step up, not just with policies on paper, but with real enforcement and accountability. It means every single one of us has to decide whether we are going to look away when harassment happens or whether we are going to take ownership of the problem. The fight belongs to everyone, because injustice anywhere weakens justice everywhere. You don't get to stand on the sidelines and pretend neutrality is acceptable. Neutrality is silence, and silence fuels the problem. Responsibility means stepping into the discomfort, into the confrontation, into the fight, even when it doesn't directly touch your own life. Too many people underestimate the power of collective responsibility. They think one voice won't matter, one action won't matter, one person standing up won't change anything. But change has never started with everyone, it has always started with someone. A single spark ignites a fire, a single voice breaks the silence, a single act of courage inspires others to move. Human responsibility means refusing to wait for someone else to go first, refusing to hide behind the illusion that someone else will take care of it. It means recognizing that if you're part of humanity, you're already involved, whether you choose to act or not. The only question is whether you're going to be on the side of silence and comfort or on the side of courage and action. There is strength and ownership. When you claim responsibility for a problem, you claim the power to do something about it. When men say harassment is not just a women's issue, they open the door to real partnership, to real accountability, to real cultural shifts. When institutions say harassment is not just something for HR to handle, but something central to the health of their entire system, they create environments where abusers lose their power. When individuals say this isn't someone else's problem, this is my problem, then movements gain traction, momentum builds, and cultures begin to transform. Responsibility is not weakness, it's not burden, it's strength. It's the ability to say, I refuse to let this continue unchecked. I refuse to look away. I refuse to live in a society that normalizes harassment. The truth is, humanity rises or falls together. When women are harassed, disrespected, or silenced, humanity as a whole is diminished. When we allow harassment to exist unchecked, we are building a weaker world for everyone. But when we step up, when we take responsibility as a collective, when we make harassment not just a women's fight, but a human fight, then we reclaim the strength that comes from unity. Responsibility binds us together because when one person suffers injustice, all of us are touched by it. The choice is simple. Either we hide in comfort and denial, pretending it's not our issue, or we step into the hard reality, embrace responsibility, and fight for a world that refuses to tolerate harassment in any form.